There are many reasons that students may need extra help in a school setting. However, special education services are reserved for students with disabilities who have gone through a very specific eligibility process. The eligibility team must include the same members as the IEP team, such as an administrator, a special education teacher, a regular education teacher, and the parents. However, it may also include additional participants, such as a school psychologist who may have performed some of the evaluations, a guidance counselor who may have done some observations, or anyone who may have been a part of the process of collecting data to determine eligibility. In order to be found eligible for special education services, the eligibility team must determine that there is evidence of an impairment. They must also determine that that impairment has an adverse impact on the student's educational performance. Furthermore, that impact needs to be to the extent that this student requires specially designed instruction. And there are also some other specific criteria that must be met for specific disability areas. It is important to note that just because a student may have a medical diagnosis, such as a diagnosis of autism, that does not mean that that student is automatically eligible for criteria. I want to make it clear that no eligibility team can determine that a student does not have autism. That if that student has a medical diagnosis, that would be considered and would have to be respected by the eligibility team. However, before that student is eligible for special education services, it must be determined that that autism is impacting the student's educational performance to the extent that they require specially designed instruction. Related services are not the same as special education services. However, only students with IEPs are able to receive related services. These services may include such things as occupational therapy, physical therapy, and sometimes speech therapy if the student doesn't receive them through special education services, special transportation, counseling, etc. It is important to know that related services are not determined by the eligibility team. Related services are determined by the IEP team. Because a student is not able to receive related services until they have been found eligible for special education services, this is a process that must be addressed by the IEP team. To clarify, the IEP team determines when a student receives related services, and they also determine when those related services are terminated. There are 14 educational disability categories in the state of Virginia. Most states are the same or very similar. They may be worded a little bit differently. It is important to remember that educational disability categories do not override or discount medical diagnoses. However, a medical diagnosis does not mean that a student automatically receives special education services. Remember that they have to also meet those specific guidelines that were talked about in a previous slide. For more information regarding how a student is eligible in each of the categories listed here, you can go back to the supplemental guidance document for eligibility and evaluation, and it will actually show you a worksheet for each of these eligibility guidelines. These are very helpful for you understanding how a student is found eligible for a specific disability area, and I highly recommend that you review them.